Okay, for the record, this is the meeting of the Select Board's Committee on Policing Reform for September 16th, 2020. Let's start off with the minutes. Have people had an opportunity to review the minutes for accuracy?
Bernard, I have two comments on what I just looked at about 5 minutes ago. And secondly, it's really hard to do minutes that quickly. I mean, I'm famous for nitpicking with minutes. I'm sorry to be that way, but that's the way I am. But it's pretty hard to do it when you don't have time to look at them in advance. But I
Yeah.
did somehow 5 minutes ago spot two things, which I will offer as friendly amendments.
Okay, why don't you send them to Devin and
You want
we
to deal
will.
with it later?
Yeah, well, no, Devin will incorporate them and we can approve the minutes as amended.
Oh, all right. Before the meeting ends, you mean?
No, now.
Well, all right. I don't type that fast, but they're only two
Well,
sentences.
no,
They're two sentences, but I'll do what you
okay.
just said.
So why don't you tell us what they are? We will accept the minutes subject to those edits.
So just all right. So on the body camera, I just wanted to add that the subcommittee had passed a motion that was I think you don't have to, I think that's enough. Just the subcommittee had passed a motion on that we asked to be put on a vote for the next meeting. So it's just the fact that there was a motion that we had passed.
Okay.
Follow me?
Yep. You got that, Devin?
Yes, and Marty, if you still want to send me your normal markup, that's
Well, all right. I mean, I think maybe what Bernard seems to want to do, which I think is just as easy as for me to just give you the second one and you do your own thing, however you're going to do it, and then.
Yeah, but why don't you tell us what the second one is so that.
All right, yeah, the second one is just equally simple. It's on the last thing, work plan topics, that Michael and I had volunteered to work on a draft on that to send to Bernard.
Okay, great. Anyone object to those corrections to the minutes? Okay, then I move approval of the minutes of September 9, 2020. All in favor? Okay, we have to go through a roll call, or let's just raise our hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Zohrab? Opposed. Okay. Let's see, next.
No, I'm in favor. I'm in favor. That must have just been.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that was a bit of a delay.
Okay. Next, regarding the discussion by officers Pilgrim and Walker, I wanted to just give the committee an opportunity to give their thoughts, their comments, their questions, etc., so that we really capture what the committee thinks about a presentation like this. I got a few emails from people who made some comments. It's important to capture those comments for the record. So anyone have any thoughts?
Quickly, I did want to mention, this is Devin. In your packet, which you received an updated version of this morning, and you got the original version last night when officers Walker and Pilgrim sent their responses. A couple of you had emailed additional questions that you didn't think were answered during the presentation, and they took the time to write those answers out. Those are in your packet right now, as well as a copy of the presentation that they gave you last week.
Okay.
May I offer two quick comments?
Yes.
One is, I thought they were fabulous. I was very impressed by both of them, and I think they should be integrated into one of the things I hope we will talk about, which is an ongoing community relations educational component for the police department. And I thought many people in the community should not just have one-to-one interactions with our police department, which everyone has, but people like them, more people should know about them than the people that just happen to run into them in the streets. And secondly, that document, which again, I just looked at about 10 minutes ago, I don't think it has any names or anything on it. And I think for the public record that it's going to be part of, it should have their names and maybe a date.
Okay. I think that's appropriate. Any other discussion regarding the presentation?
This is Jonathan here speaking. I thought overall, it's definitely a good thing having young Black men on the force that are passionate, and about, obviously, as they stated at the start of the presentation, they're born Black, they're gonna die Black, and that's the first thing that comes. And when they take off their uniform, they are Black first and foremost. In addition to that, I thought it was an example of just promoting the Brookline Police Department on this conversation. I think the effort of having them come in and make the presentation was great. And on the other hand, I think it was also a positive PR for the Brookline Police Department in general. So it's not a bad thing that they were on, and at the same time, I think because of that, we shouldn't take that and say, well, we have young Black men in the Brookline Police Department that are doing this great work, and so that we shouldn't ask the critical questions we need to ask about the deep issues that we have in the department. And so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. By the same token, by the way, when we hear a negative thing said about the police department, we shouldn't take that without looking at them deeper, as well as balancing that with any positive information we have. I mean, so it goes both ways, Jonathan. And what we're trying to do here is just get a complete picture with all the aspects of the situation in the Brookline Police Department. And I talked to an officer a couple of days ago who said something that was pretty telling. Says he doesn't think that the town has their back despite all that they've done, and in a certain sense, it's disincentivizing improvements in the police department. Now, I don't think that that's going to prevent people from going forward with improvements, but there is this town is really demoralizing the police department in many respects, because we don't look at all aspects of the issues that we face with policing.
Yeah, it is not my not so much intention, but I am not coming from a position of partiality, right? Just to make that very clear, I am an impartial person through and through. But with that said, I think we have to look at the evidence as they stand. And I think one of the things that 2020 has taught us is to have vision, 2020 vision, and to be able to really look at things critically, to be able to have effective and efficient understanding of matters as they stand.
Great, right. June?
Yes, thanks. I thought that Officers Walker and Pilgrim were really great to hear from, and I think that I agree with both Marty and Jonathan, that I think that having an ongoing educational forum or series is really, really important, because I think even those of us who feel like we know a little more than the rest of Brookline about some of the programs that are run by the police department. They were saying all kinds of things that I had never heard before. And I think that I think the community doesn't know what the police, I think the police have not, for many different reasons, have not been able to do great PR work about some of the great work that they do. And I think sort of educating the community is a big part of what this group should do as a baseline in order to figure out the reform issues. We need to know, and everyone in the community needs to know what it is the department is doing. So I thought they were phenomenal.
Okay. Any other comments? Elizabeth?
I agree with everything that's been said, and I really want to thank you, Bernard, for making sure that we're getting all the perspectives. I think one of the things we pride ourselves on here in Brookline is we actually do listen to all the perspectives. And in our work, it's the police, the citizens, the leadership of the police, the union, the real patrolmen. I think we want to hear from everybody if we're going to be effective in putting forth good decisions for any reforms necessary. So I really appreciate making sure that we got some of those voices right into our meeting.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay.
If I could just say something, I appreciate all the comments that have been said so far. And it is a problem that the police department doesn't get their word out as to a lot of the good things that are being done and have been done. I think that works both ways. I think the police got to do a better job, but if anybody knows how we can get the community to get involved a little bit more than they are, that would help. I know that just in the past couple of years, the department has gone out under Chief Lipson and talked about putting on different community listening sessions, and they did not get much of a turnout. And that's has been consistent. We had stopped some programs because we didn't have an adult turnout in town. If anybody has ideas on how to get their jump started, I think now's the time to put it out in this committee, is that some recommendations on community engagement, both from the police, but also from the community.
Yeah. So this isn't a recommendation, but it's just, a lot of it depends on how prominent the police are in the news. I think because of the events of this year, I think there are more people who are interested in finding out more about the police. I am concerned that people may be coming into it from national events with an overall distrust of what's going on with the police. But it is important for all sides to get out there. And I think it's important for this committee to present all sides. I mean, I would love this committee. I believe the people in this committee can be very balanced in their perspective and insightful. And it's important to get those things out. My concern is that when positive, people are just going. It's hard for people to come into this with, I would say, no preconceived notions. That's one of the realities. The most important thing we can do is get the word out and present ourselves as present the information in as, I'll say, an objective way as possible. But I guess I'm wondering a little bit. I do think that the educational things that we're going to do will help with what we're trying to do. And that's these videos, I think, are going to be the beginning. And I think we'll probably get feedback at the town hall meeting about what people's grievances are, their concerns about the police. That'll help inform us about what we need to do next. So that's all I wanted to say right now.
Jonathan?
Yeah. Excuse me. Ron, I generally agree with you. Where I disagree is, when it comes to operational risk management, and I'm not an expert in this area per se, but my understanding is that you put contingencies in place to prevent, kind of bad press, because of the way in which you're resolving things before they actually happen. I think part of it here is, as somebody who has had many run-ins with the Brookline police, and some people kind of, subconsciously may think, well, maybe you deserved it. I would say to that, it's beyond just national news and perception, negative perception of the police. I would say it's part of a long-standing kind of cultural part of sort of the blue wall culture that's been in place in this case with the Brookline police for a very long time. So in order to change the narrative, in order to shift people's conscious perceptions and awareness of the police, there needs to be a deep sort of cleaning and flushing process, so that positive PR, when it goes out, it's not received with a sort of a closed, I'm already closed off to you kind of thing. And that community engagement is not just done at Egmont or High Street housing. That community engagement is done all over the community in the way in which police engage the community positively, right? And so I think it's part of deep-seated cultural things that need to be shifted within the department.
Okay, June?
Yeah, I think that given the thoughtful way that Brookline is engaging in this process, I think that we should engage the press a little bit and on the process. And Brookline is, along with having so much talent in this community, there are a ton of reporters who, from WBUR to the Globe, to the Brookline Tab, who live and work in this community. And I think that inviting them in proactively to look at the process, I mean, it could go haywire potentially, but I think that mostly it'll be a positive thing, because this is such a thoughtful process that we're engaged in. So that I would say, let's bring them in early. Let's bring the press in early.
Okay, good idea.
I'd like to ask a question of Jonathan. So as a person who has had reason to be skeptical of the culture and intentions of the Brookline police from personal experience, what would it take from your point of view to, I mean, you talked about a need for deep cleaning, but tell me more about the deep cleaning that would need to be done sufficiently and publicly for you to have a higher level of trust in and not just because it's propaganda for you to have a high level of trust, but because you sense that there has been genuine reform, genuine reconciliation, so that I'll say the police deserve a level of trust from you. What would you like to see for that to happen?
Sure. A little example. In 2019, Eric Tinsley, I don't know if you're aware of the Eric Tinsley case. I'm sure perhaps Bernard does, and other people who have been around the select board do. I had a chance to read his letter to the select board. Before the charge was made to Eric Tinsley on February 3rd, he was already stopped 6 times by the Brookline police without any charges or arrests. So they would just question him, right? And so what happened there was, it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, we've already given this person many different breaks over time. And so when it kind of came to a time where they felt like they had this person, there was already a mountain of data where they had stopped them many different times. So stuff like that causes mistrusts, and when it came time, the case ended up getting dismissed, by a district court judge. But, when it came time for him to present at the select board, approximately 29 police officers showed up. And that was just intimidating. I mean, to the police officers, it's like, well, we're showing support for our fellow officer, but without actually looking at what happened, how did it happen, how did we get to this? It's like, oh, well, we're showing support, but in reverse, what was happening was actually a show of intimidation. So stuff like that causes deep sort of mistrusts of the police, and stories like that happen all the time. And so that is one example. In terms of, for me personally speaking, what I would like to see, I don't really have an answer for that at this time. I'm gonna have to get back to you, Ron, on that. But I think I would actually like to make a motion, if I may, for the records, as part of the police complaint, as I'm helping Michael Zurab here to gather the police records to further understand, the evidence around Eric's case, because it is complex, and and it has a lot of stuff in there that just don't make sense.
Okay. With respect, first of all, things like that don't happen all the time, but they do happen. And in that particular instance, Select Person Fernandez engaged with Chief Lipson to address the issue of the use of police uniforms outside of business. So, and I don't know, you may want to follow up on that. By the way, I got cut off because I fixed my bandwidth problem on this computer, but now the power cord is loose and comes out, and I lost power suddenly. So I apologize for that. I'll try to be more aware of that. So I missed a few things. I'm sorry, Marty?
Okay, couple of things. First, I did reach Dwayne, and he does have something going on at work, and he makes a request that I would share as well, that we settle on a regular meeting time, and that both of us would prefer the 5 or 6 o'clock time. It appears that he's the head of some climate organization based in Dudley Square. I forget the name of it, but it's a tough time for him in the mornings. And I'd prefer the 5 o'clock myself. And I think a regular time would be helpful. Getting back to the issue of the public education issue and the 2 officers. And actually, the rest of the conversation, it seems to me that we're really discussing important issues that come up on an ad hoc basis here. And I really think that we have to deal with the subcommittee issue and get things broken down into topics that subcommittees can focus on. And we're going to talk about that a little later. But there've been discussions just now about what I'll call public education, and also about the procedures relative to complaints and the officers showing up at a hearing. These are things that need to be looked at, but I think we're kind of floundering around dealing with things that come to everyone's attention in these meetings. And lastly, on the public education thing, it's hitting me that the most watched weekly meeting in the town is the select board meetings. And maybe something like what we've been talking about should be happening periodically at select board meetings for a presentation by the police department.
Okay, that idea got shot down when I raised it. But Marty, look, this part of the meeting is an opportunity for people to respond to the presentation we had last week. That people are sort of going off into other areas is okay. And we'll try to keep focused, but I wanted to give people an opportunity to give their views on the presentation last week. Maybe that's that should conclude this part of the meeting. Let me just add that Chief Lipson did a program called Community Roll Call, where he brought community people in, and of course it's limited, I think maybe 10, 15 people each time. And they took them through some of their de-escalation, well, a lot of things, but one of the things that I found most interesting was their de-escalation training. And there's a Brookline cop whose name I don't remember, who's an actor and an incredible actor.
Sean Williams.
Pardon me?
Officer Sean Williams.
Sean Williams, okay. What he does is he sort of role plays situations that police get into and help people from the community understand the type of stress they're under and the type of decision making that has to go on in terms of avoiding letting a situation get out of control. I mean, actually filming one of those type of events would be a really interesting way to make some of the issues we're talking about abstractly very, very real. So I just throw that out as something that maybe we should approach the police department to do.
So
okay.
we already have a video with Sean Williams in it from a CIT training from 1.5 years ago, and I'll distribute that to everyone, and people can decide whether that's something we want to post or promote more widely. But it was part of a National Alliance on Mental Illness conference. We made it for that, and it was it was in 2018. And Lieutenant Jen Pastor and Sergeant Chris Malin won an award from NAMI that year. So part of the presentation in giving them awards for, it was Mental Health Advocate of the Year or something, Police Mental Health Advocate of the Year. We made a video. It's only a couple of minutes long, but Sean Williams is featured prominently doing his role plays and having officers come in and de-escalate him as part of their training. So I'll get that to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. That should be very great. And please.
May I make a request to June? I know what she's talking about with NAMI, but I don't know if everyone does. It's something that's pretty important for Brookline Police, and am I the only one that wonders if everyone knows about it? Does everyone know what NAMI is?
Jim, why don't you just give us a quick thumbnail of NAMI?
So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a grassroots organization. Every state has a chapter, and every state has several little chapters. So there's a NAMI Cambridge and a NAMI Boston and a NAMI Brookline Newton. And mostly it's people who are living with mental illness or their family members. And it provides support groups and educational groups to people. NAMI, many years ago, on a national level, got involved in the Crisis Intervention Team training program with the University of Memphis, and has partnered with police departments all over the country in rolling out Crisis Intervention Team training, which is kind of the best practice 40-hour training on de-escalation and best response to people with mental health issues. And it's a mix of breaking the stigma around mental illness and breaking down the fear that people have when they approach somebody with mental illness by bringing in people who are living with mental health conditions and having them tell their own story. And role playing, and so it's a mix of kind of didactic training and then role playing in order to get people to practice practical skills. Brookline has trained all 100% of their officers in this. So NAMI.
As part of our educational program, which we'll be talking about later, June is going to sort of conceptualize a lot of those things and talk about not only NAMI, but also I propose you also talk about issues with autism and Asperger's, the police department I think is working with this Asperger's and Asperger's network here in New England. So
yes, and that's all part of the CIT program.
okay, good. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, and bear with me, my printer is down, so I have to read stuff off my computer. Next, we're going to talk about the online educational program, programming. Ron, June, and Janice Khan and I have been working on putting together, and Dan O'Leary, putting together the outline of an educational program that right now we're seeing it as 3 or 4 presentations posted to our website by September 23rd. And then as we produce others, posting them to our website on various issues. And in your packet is the outline that we've come up with that, I'd like to get some comment from or reaction to. This is education. I think someone said education should be an ongoing and long-term process through this committee, and I agree. And this is could be a good foundation for doing that. Hopefully, at some point, we'll have a large number of videos on our website that people can reference when they're, as they're posted or as they have time to review them. So I assume people have read the outline.
Well, actually, Bernard, as I said, I just saw the packet about 10 minutes before the meeting, but the question I have is, what is your timing on getting comments on this? I'd rather take some time and look at it myself.
Well, we're going to have to start putting together a couple of the sessions fairly soon, but ongoing comments would be very helpful.
So Bernard, the 23rd is next Wednesday,
Right.
A week from today. So I spoke with Lieutenant Jen Pastor this morning, and kind of the first time she could even have an initial conversation about this is next Thursday, the 24th. And I've already gotten back something from Annabelle Lane, who's the social worker, saying she's moving that day and she can't even make the initial conversation on the 24th. So I think the 23rd is going to be, I think, we had talked about maybe dropping a couple of these, but not all of them on the 23rd. I think it's just like way too ambitious to think about getting people to prepare and also video this in a week,
Okay.
at least on the mental health side.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, fair enough. I mean, the point is to get things out when we can get them out, so that we can begin the educational process of the town. I mean, Elizabeth.
I was wondering, I like the general topics if you're asking for our feedback on the initial document, Bernard. I really like it a lot on the draft. But I was thinking that given our conversation today, Chief O'Leary brought up about how to engage the community in the community service. I wondered if it would be I wondered if this would be an opportunity to include something in there about that, about how to best engage the community and recognize that as a growing edge for the police department, about how to make that more effective in engaging the community, but also to invite the community to figure out how to do that. I wasn't sure about that under the community service. It might be a bullet to think about a little bit. It would just need some discussion, I think, from the experts.
No, that's a good point. By the way, last night, the select board authorized the hiring of a community engagement person for the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. So one of the things that person that's going to take a while to get someone on board, but we should think of how we can give some ideas to that person going forward for community engagement around this issue. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes.
I'm curious. is the educational piece just intended to give the perspective of BPD in terms of what, I understand it's, to help individuals further understand the work of policing in town. And though it sounds to me that the proposal and presentations put forth are one-sided, just in terms of, here's the history and hot topics, and kind of from the perspective of police as it stands, is maybe I'm not getting to my question.
Well, it's not written, the outline is not written to be one-sided, and the idea is not to make it one-sided, but to, provide people with basic information they need about, what policing is. What is walk and talk? People don't know, and therefore they make, assumptions about it. But to say that's one-sided, I think, sort of misses, and maybe you saw an earlier version, but the first bullet under history and present state is a summary of policing a social control mechanism. That by definition is not one-sided. It's looking at the way that policing has been used throughout our history as social control. You're protecting the status quo, whether good or bad, and enforcing laws used for, squelching dissent, against union organizing, et cetera. So, what we're trying to do is to give people a foundation of policing so that we can then, look at, what has been done in the Brookline Police Department that is, along the lines of maybe some of the bad things, but also what we've done to overcome the history of policing used in a bad way. Let's see, Zora, right?
Yeah. I was just curious in this discussion of history, whether we would also get some discussion of recent history and some of the litigation. I imagine the town doesn't want to talk about current litigation, but at least settled litigation impacting the police department, and perhaps what lessons that the police department has learned from settling those lawsuits. There have been, not just 50 years ago, but even in the last 10 years, some pretty important incidents involving the police department. For example, an off-duty officer pointing a weapon at two Black drivers. And I just worry, I believe in progress, and I know we've made a lot of progress, but I think it's important not to have the history discussion end in the 1960s and talk about all the progress we've made without acknowledging perhaps some of the more recent incidents that the police department has dealt with.
Of course.
I could address that for a minute, if I could. One of the presenters that we're having here is Dr. Cox, Gerard Cox, who had been brought on board when we had a couple of lawsuits lodged against him. And he's preparing a section to discuss here under racism. And that's him together with a police officer that will talk about incidents that took place and the department's reaction to it. And we also have another outside speaker, Dr. Jack McDevitt, that's going to speak on the value of policing and the value of data, traffic stop data, statistics. And so there are going to be some people that have been involved in the police department that are not members of the police department. The involvement has been recommendations to improve. So they're going to be asked to put on a presentation as well.
And Jack,
they have been asked and they've agreed to do it, I should say.
Okay. And Jack McDevitt, as I understand, I don't know if we called him in or he just jumped into the controversy over police stops by Brookline police of Black and Hispanic drivers a number of years ago. And he did some of the academic, what I call academic research on police stops. And as a result, certain changes were made to try to address the problems that he found. So I mean, he's an academic, but I mean, he's well regarded academic who really would be an important person to hear from.
Bernard, can
I'd like to say, so I looked over the list of proposed speakers for the educational stuff, and they all sound, and I think I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. I think a lot of them have deep credentials. I was struck by the fact that there were no people of color among that list of speakers, and even though I think the speakers will probably are likely to present some very unbiased and insightful kinds of things. One of the issues is trust. I mean, I believe that there are people who will say, "Wait a minute, people of color who will say," or even some non-people of color who will say, "Wait a minute, why are all these speakers kind of from the standard academic whatever establishment? Why don't I hear from people who are not normally represented in these kinds of discussions?" So I would like to follow up this particular set of educational topics with speakers who I think are definitely worthy of respect, with voices who are not normally heard, both because they're not normally heard, but also because I think it will increase trust in the process, and that trust from the community, I think will be important for us to have if we're going to make genuine positive changes.
Okay. First of all, Jerry Cox is Black. I don't really know the other people, but I take your word that they're not people of color. Some of the other speakers are not academics like Linda Roseman, just a community person who has some important things to say. But this is just a preliminary list based on our discussions and names that came up. If you know other names that would be good to fill in some of the topics or put in as speakers for some of the topics, let us know. Or anyone have some suggestions on this.
I'm sorry.
I'm not clear what list you're talking about right now. I'm looking at the online educational outline. I only see Cox's name there.
Okay, maybe you don't have the most recent version.
This is in the packet that we got this morning, I think.
Yeah, it should have been.
Second page.
Yeah, second page.
Well, the packet I'm looking at is page 14, and then 15 is it's a report by Cox, but I don't see anything about I don't see a second page on the educational outline thing.
Okay, so you must have an earlier version.
Yeah, just to say, I posted it in the chat. I'm also looking at the packet and I don't see a list of speakers, so that must not have been circulated.
Okay.
I printed it and it just printed on the back, so that maybe that's part of it. I don't know. It should. It just.
I just added the list in the chat of the speakers.
Yeah, okay. And Devin, could you send to everyone right now the most recent version of this? Because apparently
is that what you sent at 11 o'clock last night? Because that is in the group folder.
It's in the group folder. Okay.
So it's not in the packet?
No, it's also in the packet. I have put this in your group folder. You can see the 092320 online community education item. So it's in your OneDrive folder. And then it should also be, I just need to go into OnBase and find what page it is, but I can share that out.
Yeah.
Everyone should have received it this morning.
Okay. Elizabeth? I mean, by the way, hold on. Some of us are 20th century folks, not 21st century, like all this technology.
This is the one that you sent last night after 11, right, Bernard?
Yeah.
I just had a question actually following up on Ron's point. And I for the subcommittee that's doing this, are we trying to keep our programming around educational resources very specific on Brookline? Or were you also wanting to do context in broader understanding about policing? I didn't know exactly where you were trying to drive. And the reason I brought that up is I was thinking about Ron's point that there are some real experts, even in our, in our academia around us. And they would also provide diversity of presentation. So I wondered about, it's a question really to the subcommittee, what the thinking was.
Tell us, give us names and we'll try to incorporate them.
Well, I was thinking about like Roland Fryer Jr., at Harvard, or I was just trying to think about people that have really talked about policing and studied it, and are people that bring diversity to the presentations. It's really just a.
So in terms of, the focus here, it's both, broad, national, international stuff as relevant to helping us understand policing and, specific issues that may arise in Brookline that we should address in our, our efforts in this committee.
Okay. Yeah, I'll think maybe we could all think about that and just forward you names of people that we think of.
Yes.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Bernard, just to tie two conversations together, I'm wondering whether we can incorporate Officers Walker and Pilgrim into any of these educational forum. Maybe there's a piece of something that they could speak to, and that would obviously add to having people of color in there, as well as anyone that people know who are academics in the area.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we should include them not because they're Black, but because they have something to say.
I didn't mean to say that we should include them because I'm just trying to tie the two pieces of the meeting.
No, I understand. So, one of the topics under, one of the topics somewhere here, under the racism topic is the Historic Injustice and Present Policing program that many police departments send their new recruits to in order to give them a sort of understanding of the history of bad behavior by policing, so that they understand some of the attitudes that people in the communities they're serving have and can counter that. So I think Pilgrim and Walker are involved with bringing that to the Brookline department, I think. And so that would be an important thing. That'd be something that they could talk about there. But okay. Yeah. Okay, where do we go from here? And it doesn't look like we're going to have anything on the 23rd, although maybe we can get a couple presentations up. I mean, my concern is just to start the process. People have comments to the outline, suggestions for additional speakers that we can approach. Please let us know, and we'll go from there.
Bernard, I have a very quick question for Devin. She mentioned a web page. I'm not sure what I see a link that just came up in the chat. Is that what you're talking about?
So I was just going to share that with everyone. If you go to boards and commissions, which is brooklinema.gov/165, that brings you to all of the boards and commissions. Your page is the Select Board's Committee on Policing Reforms. And that website is always where you can find any of your materials. Like if you're confused about how to get to OneDrive, if you have been unable to bookmark that link, which I still recommend, and if you need help walking through how to do that, I'm happy to help you with that. But I just went there, I grabbed the public link to your information packet, and I can see that the outline that Bernard was referring to is the first item under 2B. So it's a good kind of refresher for folks in the public as well.
Yeah. And everyone bear in mind, we are still struggling with this new world of technology at the center of everything we do. So.
Also, Bernard, one of the attendees has a hand raised. I believe it's the Women's Commission liaison.
Okay, I guess let her speak. I don't see her on the screen. So.
Do you have your participant list popped out?
No, I don't. Okay, why don't you invite her in?
Hi, Felina, you've been unmuted.
You know what? That was an accident.
Oh, okay.
Well, why don't
sorry.
you introduce yourself, Felina, and tell us, why you're here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Felina, and I'm quite interested in the work that you're doing. And I'm actually caught off guard. I was listening very closely to everything that you were saying, actually. For a lot of reasons. And I just want to say that I was particularly interested because I have a daughter actually who has Asperger's and autism. So I was interested in the program that you were talking about. But I also have a son who's on the police force who is who is of mixed race. So he doesn't have dark complected skin. So he doesn't suffer like many other darker African-American people. But he clearly is not white. So I was interested in this task force for many reasons, but also because I've lived in Brookline my whole life and have seen the crime rates here, and people think that Brookline doesn't suffer from crime, but I know that it does. And in fact, this morning before I got on this site, I got an email from one of my neighbors saying that yet again, bikes were stolen off, well, attempted to be stolen off of their porch. So this is an ongoing fight. This is not what you guys are talking about here, but that's something more for the other policing.
Right.
But I'm here because I like the fact that you guys are wanting to reform what's happening. I've been very concerned when I heard what happened in the past, especially with what Michael Zerab had talked about, the incident with the police officer having pulled his gun. I'm very aware of that situation. People being stopped. And this has nothing to do with the commission. This is me as a person of the public.
But you haven't told us the key piece of information we need to know, and that is your liaison from the Women's
Yes,
Commission.
me as a woman here as the liaison, I feel as a woman that we are affected in almost every way. Anything that happens in the town, we are all exposed to everything that happens. Walking down the street, this isn't going to come out the right way, but I myself have been mugged 4 times in the town of Brookline, and I haven't reported them just because of fear of, I can't even explain why. One time it was in pure daylight. One time it was at night and people saw what was happening and no one did anything. And I don't want other women to feel like they can't say anything. I want other women to feel like they shouldn't be afraid of where they live. In Brookline, I'm not saying that Brookline is not a safe place. I live here because I feel it's safer than most other places. I've lived here most of my life because I feel it is a safe place. And I've I've had many people move to Brookline because I feel it is a safe place.
Okay.
And I want it, our street, I feel, is one of the safest places. I only moved, when I got married, I moved around the corner from
Okay.
where I grew up because I feel it's a safe place.
Okay.
As
So, Felina, let's go on. I just wanted to introduce you to the.
yes, I'm sorry. It's
okay.
never ask me to speak again because I don't know how to not, but
Okay.
anyway, so as a woman
Sure.
of being
So,
here,
right, we got it. Make sure that you provide to the committee, you can do it through me or through Devin, any thoughts you have, particularly perspectives with respect to women and some of the issues that maybe we're missing that we should be digging into more deeper as they relate to women. Or any other perspectives you have. I mean, as a mother of a Brookline cop and as a mother of a child with Asperger's, I mean, that gives you a unique perspective on some of the issues that we're talking about. So,
I will, Bernard. Thank you. Please don't ask me to speak again because I can't
okay.
stop. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bernard, may I have a quick comment? I'm hoping, was it Felina? I didn't catch the name.
Yes,
but
Felina.
I'm hoping that the commission will be contacted for various subjects that would particularly pertain to that commission, like domestic violence calls, which are one of the issues that we need to look at, and also mental health issues, and probably some others. So I don't know if she's going to be on our distribution list.
Yes,
but
she is, and that the purpose of her being a
Good.
liaison is to make sure that we don't miss issues related to women, among other things. So, okay, so yes.
Excuse me, can I just say one thing before we leave the educational component there? You know, I think you said it too, Bernard, earlier that this draft here has undergone many changes. We have had conversations with people that are going to present, and especially the officers that are going to present. And I think in fairness, to get it all moving and get going, if we could sooner rather than later formalize this or finalize it so people can know what to prepare for, what to talk about. And then as other things come along afterwards, maybe that can happen after we get past these topics that we get put out there. I just know that Chief Morgan has actually talked to a lot of the officers that have stated an interest in presenting, and then had to shut them down because we changed again. So to get it moving, if we could say okay or nay to the draft, and then they can get going, and you can get past this when we can put these topics behind us and come in with a second group after that if need be.
Right. Okay. Maybe this is a question for Michael Downey. Is he still
just
here?
said he had to sign off. I think he had a 10:30 Zoom.
Okay. One of the people on our at the risk of okay, see, we have to meet and talk about that, and we don't have a meeting posted. So I'm gonna just take it on myself. Why don't each member of the committee or subcommittee, make your changes to the outline and see if we can finalize it for meeting on Monday. Would that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And
Just a
object
suggestion.
to us doing that?
Well, I figured you'd catch that faster than the blue hand. Just a suggestion, if there are particular sections that are contingent on police officer participation, maybe the group could agree by consensus to have Dan O'Leary move forward on those so that the officers can ensure their commitment. And then the other pieces as a whole group could be voted on formally as part of an agenda.
Okay, anyone object to that? I mean, I think we have to be careful not to overload this with members of the police department. But there are people, in the police department who have a unique perspective and the knowledge that we need to have. But I agree. That okay with you, Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So our committee should meet on Monday, and between now and then, put ideas to pen to paper so that we can get stuff to Dan in final form by afterwards, after that meeting. So Devin, we're gonna have to post a meeting for Monday. What time would people like to look at? Ron, any time that's good for you? You're muted, Ron.
Sorry, I was also distracted by looking at the link that we just got. Okay, so we're talking about next Monday?
Yep.
Okay, so let me just look at my calendar.
Today's the 16th, so that would be the 21st. How about you, June?
I can do just about any time on Monday the 21st.
Okay. How about you, June?
I'm tied up from about 1 to 4, but otherwise I'm good.
How about 11?
11 is great.
11's fine.
Okay. Okay. Devin, we'll talk afterwards in terms of getting that posted. Okay, let's move on to the chokehold ban. People ready for that? Okay, that wasn't funny, I know. Okay, so you should have received a copy of my proposal for a chokehold ban. I also sent that to Michael Kevaney over at the police union, just to get their sense. And he made a comment about it I think is actually right. And that is the second part of this this proposal, which talks about this limited exception applies only if, and goes on, and then requires reporting to the Office of Police Professional Responsibility. Maybe that's kind of unnecessary. I mean, you really just want to make sure that there's a ban on chokeholds, unless serious or imminent death or serious bodily injury is at risk. So I think I would agree with his comment. And in the use of force policy, there is a provision that requires any use of force to be reported up the chain. And I think that would cover a chokehold. This language that he's citing probably is unnecessary, and it's best to keep things simple. And my main concern is having a ban on chokeholds, because that's the one thing that's missing from our use of force policy, that everyone agrees is important, even though maybe in Brookline that's not as big an issue as it would be in some place like New York. It still has, if nothing else, symbolic value. So I mean, what do other people think?
I agree. I think we should just get it done with.
Okay, so the process would be to put this in the form of a general order of the police department, which would be an amendment to the use of force policy, and make sure it's vetted by town council, Chief Morgan, Ann Braga, I guess, and then get it before the select board for a vote. This is something that, you know, I've always thought is easy to do, and we ought to just do it to get ourselves in line with what is sort of consensus view as to what police use of force policy should include. So,
Bernard, Paul has his hand raised.
Paul, I'm sorry. Yes, Paul.
Oh, I had some proposed changes consistent with what I said last week.
Right.
Where it starts with breathing, I was gonna propose that we strike out may not be used as a technique to subdue a suspect, and to insert is prohibited, comma.
Okay, wait, what line are you on?
I'm down at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line.
Okay, so what would you change?
Strike may not be used as a technique to subdue a suspect.
Okay.
And insert is prohibited. And then it would read the same way as you have drafted. And that
Okay.
language would be consistent with the use of force policy, such as there's a prohibition about officers shooting at cars that are leaving the scene. It just says is prohibited.
Okay. So in other words, you're suggesting let's make it simple as opposed to going into a lot of verbiage. Got
Right.
it.
And this would then include searches too. Because if a officer uses it and puts his or her hands on somebody's throat to have them expel something, that would be considered the same way. It's prohibited.
Okay. So I think Casey Hatchett brought up the issue of a, she called, there's a word for it, but mouth.
Right, mouth carry.
Mouth carry, right.
Right,
So,
right.
So how would you deal with that?
You have to ask consent. Unless you have probable cause.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you want to get a mouth carry out of someone's mouth, unless they're going to swallow it, you don't need to chokehold. You just need to subdue them somehow and take it out of the mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
But the cases that I've heard is that the officer will put his or her hands on the neck plus the jaw at the same time. Is that the way it's done, Dan O'Leary?
I don't really know. I've never used it, so I don't really know, to be honest with you.
That's what I've heard in court. And I think that's the same type of thing that should be banned, because if an officer inadvertently holds a person's neck just to search too tightly, and that could happen because people are struggling, then we're going to get the same high risk of death or injury that we're trying to ban with the chokehold.
Interesting. I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I definitely do not think we should carve out an exception to this ban for the purpose of evidence gathering. I think it should be pretty categorical, except as indicated if it's necessary to save the person's life. I think that is the only reasonable exception to a ban on chokehold. So I agree with what Paul said.
Okay, so no exception for evidence gathering. I think that's.
Yeah, I do not think the possibility of finding drugs in somebody's mouth is worth threatening to kill them.
Yeah, actually, the policy does prohibit deadly force just to collect evidence or for similar things like that, I believe. So, okay, I think that's not inconsistent with the policy in general. Okay.
I don't see anything in there that allows this to get evidence.
I'm sorry, in where?
in the proposal.
No, there's not currently, but there was some indication of perhaps adding an exemption for that purpose. And
Oh,
Paul's suggestion is also somewhat broader, at least in the language, by just saying is prohibited instead of narrowly saying as a technique for subduing a suspect.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying we adopt what Paul said.
that sounds fine. All right. All right. I guess I misunderstood that somebody thought that getting evidence would be permitted by this.
No. Okay, does anyone, does everyone agree that, with that change? Elizabeth?
Okay, yes.
Yes, I agree with that change. I just was thinking, I wanted to make sure that we heard from any police perspective around the language. You've heard from some taking out that one piece from the union. I just wanted to make sure that we'd heard from that perspective. And also, it would be really helpful. And I don't know if there's a way for us to do this, but what are the consequences? We don't want inadvertent consequences for something like this. So what are do we have data about where this has been adopted? Has there been any increase in firearms? For example, shootings of suspects or something? I just want to be sure we don't do something that then creates a problem that we didn't anticipate. So I wondered if there was some data on that somewhere that we could just look at to be sure that a better plan.
Dan, do you have any knowledge of data?
I don't know, but I know that I've heard about a lot of other departments, the larger ones, having this kind of prohibition, with the exception of saving your life or the life of an innocent person. And you're supposed to, and once you get that person, the suspect under control, you got to stop. And I think that probably lessens the chance of somebody using a firearm if they're allowed to do it to just gain control, and that's it. I think that's what this change in the policy, banning it outright. Nobody wants to hurt somebody, but let's prevent somebody else from getting hurt or killed. And I think it would prevent an officer reaching for his firearm or her firearm.
Yeah. I mean, in Brookline, this probably is not as hot an issue as it is, for example, in New York, where there was a ban and you still had the choking of in Staten Island. And that, research I've read indicates that having a chokehold ban doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the use of chokeholds, but this is a start, and the effectiveness of the ban really depends on the effectiveness of the use of force policy generally, and we'll be talking about that as we go on. But okay, any other comments on the chokeholds thing?
Well, Bernard, are you thinking we take a vote on this? I do have one substantive question that I want to ask. I guess I'm looking to see and recall what you said. Is it Keaveney or Keaveney? I had Keavneys in Brookline High that were called Keaveney. Anyway, how do you, aside from how you pronounce his name?
I may be pronouncing his name wrong. If he's listening in, I apologize.
Well, Chief O'Leary might know. Is it Keaveney or Keaveney?
I've used Keaveney.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. But
yeah, Michael Keaveney is here.
All right. Well, anyway, there's something about, I don't care what you call me, just call me the right name. But my question is, I guess I'm not sure what you made reference to that he had a concern about and that you want to take out. And I have a comment about that, but could you just clarify it first?
Yeah, the language beginning at this limited exception, meaning serious death or serious bodily injury. This limited exception applies only if, and then it goes into 3 instances where it could apply.
Yeah.
And then it says any use of this exception shall be reviewed immediately thereafter by the Office of Professional Responsibility. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he can speak for himself, but you know, my sense is that the first part of that's unnecessary. Well, both parts are unnecessary. The first part because, I mean, it's just excess language that just doesn't say much more than, I just don't think it says much now that I look at it. And then the second part, the last sentence, that's already covered by the use of force policy, which requires reporting when any use of deadly forces is applied, or actually any use of force, period. So,
Well, all right.
does
Let me make,
Michael,
okay, go on.
yeah, no, go ahead. Finish.
Which of us?
Yeah, you, Marty.
Okay. I mean, this raises my general comment that I made last week, and I still feel this way, is that I realize you consider this low-hanging fruit that we can move on quickly, but I personally would rather have it done in the context of a review of the whole use of force policy, because this last issue, I think, is a significant issue that I'm hoping we will look at as a committee, and the subcommittee will look at it, is the reporting requirements on use of force. And that's something I've been intrigued about, and I haven't looked at the use of force. It's about 6 pages in the police procedures. I haven't looked at them recently, and I think that this should be done in conjunction with that. I think that there are jurisdictions that are changing the reporting requirements on use of force. And also, I don't know if we have what some people may insult by calling a snitch rule, that an officer has to report what another officer does. But that, I think, is something else we should be looking at. So I have a hard time dealing with this outside of the context of the entire use of force policy. And if we take a vote on it, I'm likely to abstain.
Okay. Let's see. Hi, we're gonna push him. Okay. Jonathan has to stop at 11. Okay. Michael, Kevin, do you want to comment? I know that you're in the audience. Kevin, could you unmute him?
He's been unmuted.
Michael, do you have anything to say? Michael?
I'm sorry there. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
I apologize. You know, I'm not opposed to any of those changes at the moment. I'd like to be able to read it over. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. And just have the advice of some others on that.
Okay. It'll be in the minutes as revised by the committee, and you can look at them there and give me any comments that you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so as revised, let's take a vote on the use of force policy.
Bernard, I want to make can I make an amendment motion then?
Yep.
I mean, at this point, I still may abstain, but I still am not clear on the reason for deleting that sentence. And I'd move that it be amended to keep that sentence until we clarify the reporting requirements for all use of force.
Okay, but which sentence is that?
The one you want to delete, I think it's, you know it better than I do. I think it's the one that says any use of this exception.
Yeah, maybe review it immediately there. Yeah, reason why I want to delete that is that, let me see if I can find it. In the use of force policy, section 12, as I recall.
We don't have in front of us.
So let me just tell you, section 12, and you know, why don't you look at it and see if you think that this is sufficient, and we can further amend, you know, the use of force thing if we want to put this back in. But section 12 says duty to report use of weapons or the application of physical force, and then goes through, you know, a lot of stuff they got to do in terms of reporting. So I think that, you know, covers, you know, our concern with respect to, monitoring and reporting use of force. But if you think otherwise, let us know, and we'll further revise this. But why don't we vote now, and we can rescind the vote and make any changes if necessary. But I'd like to at least get that step forward.
Bernard, then let me tweak what I just offered as a possible amendment, that the sentence stay in, but just say shall be reviewed in accordance with whatever you just read. I just think if this is going to stand alone and get a public hearing, which it should have to have at the select board, that something about reviewing it should be in here, not just left for insiders like us to know that there's something elsewhere that talks about that.
Okay, that's fair enough. What do other people think?
Agree.
Yeah, okay. So I'll make that change. I think that's fair, and good point. So are we ready to vote on this so we can at least go to the next step? All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Do you have that, Devin?
Yes, I will just say that I'll need to chat with town council about the necessity of roll call votes for formal votes.
Okay. Tell town council we have to run a meeting. Okay. Okay.
I want to add one thing for the benefit of people that don't know this. One of the things we did in 1987, and Bernard is aware of this, I know, is we asked that the select board in their role as police commissioners, when they adopt policies for the police department, do them after public hearings with adequate notice. So I think that I'm assuming what Bernard has in mind is that this go to the select board to docket as a policy change, and that there would then be a public hearing on it that they would do, assuming they follow the policy that was adopted in 1987.
Okay. Yes, we'll do it that way. Okay, next. Well, Marty, next is your proposal. Work plan considerations of establishing additional subcommittees.
Do we have that?
Has your subcommittee put together a list of proposed subcommittees?
Michael, this is a little puzzling question, isn't it?
Well, I see that we sent these to Bernard, but they're not in the packet. You did not see Devin on that email, so I wouldn't expect them to be in the packet. But
okay,
yeah,
that's my fault. I sort of assumed that, and everyone should copy Devin with anything they send to me.
Well, may I jump in on that, because Michael and I spent considerable time on this, and we came to a procedural disagreement on the number of subcommittees, and it's not like we were fighting about it, but I felt, and I think Michael agreed, that that's kind of a threshold question that we should toss it to Bernard. So the sequence was, we had two separate graphs that covered the same topics, but Michael broke them into 4 subcommittees and I had them in 3. And I wasn't sure that anyone on the full committee would want to be on 2. And that was, so we just sent both of those 2 kind of competing proposals in terms of format to Bernard, hoping they would get on the agenda for this week with people signing up for subcommittees. And I guess it got lost into the cyber space. I don't know, maybe Bernard didn't quite understand what we were doing. So they are there, but I guess we'll have to wait till next week. Although what I'm hoping is that Bernard will make an executive decision on the 3 versus 4. Maybe we should talk about that now.
Yeah.
And then present that for discussion next week and get people actually signing up for subcommittees, because
Michael,
without
if you want
having
to
it,
send that to me, I could pull it up and share my screen if you wanted to go over it now or.
Sure. I mean, the potential issue is there's two different documents. There's what I prepared and what Marty prepared, but I will forward it and we can see what happens.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think, frankly, Marty, I don't think we should assume that at least one or two people wouldn't mind working on two subcommittees.
Well, that's fine. If
Yeah,
they
I'm
are,
already
I'm
sort
not.
of on two, and I don't think it requires more than a couple of people to be on two for 4 working subcommittees to meet.
Yeah.
But I'm about to send this. But yeah, I mean, what do folks think in principle about forming subcommittees? I mean, I agree with Marty that we need to do a lot more work outside of these meetings. We really need to split into subcommittees that meet between meetings.
Yeah, does anyone object to that?
Subcommittees are essential.
Pardon me, Ron? You're muted.
Being muted. I'm not muted according. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I disagree that subcommittees are essential and that in order for us to get all the work done that we need to get done, we need to have subcommittees. That's
okay. So, Devin, can you share your screen with that?
Yeah, in my humble opinion, I think my document is more concise and readable than Marty's. So I would like
Well,
to.
that's true. It is. Mine was not meant
Marty
to be
be
in
the first
final.
to agree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not in final form. But may I make a suggestion now at this point that might simplify this discussion, which is I'm happy with Michael's proposal and especially with keeping it to 1 page and cleaning up what I did, which was just an internal draft. It wasn't meant for presentation, but now everyone can see how I think when I'm not speaking publicly. But the point is that if there's consensus that we can handle 4 subcommittees, then I would suggest that people send after this meeting their preferences for subcommittees to Bernard and maybe give ranked voting choices as to what your first and second and third choices would be, and Bernard come with a proposal to the next meeting on who's on what subcommittee. I think we could talk for an hour about that ourselves right now, and I know nobody wants to do that. So does
Okay.
that sound like something that's doable?
That sounds good, but please copy Devin on anything you send to me. You know,
Yeah,
I'm dealing with like 4 huge work committees, plus the select board. So it's very easy for things to fall through the cracks, and that's a backup. You know.
Sorry.
And I don't claim to be the most efficient person in the world, so take that into account whenever you do anything or send anything to me. Anyway, okay, now that's a good idea. Okay, can we still see the screen with Michael Zorab proposal on it?
Yeah, they're just named really similarly, so I'm trying to figure out which one is.
Well, no, just put up Michael's.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out which one is Michael's.
The
This is 1 page.
_ MZ edits. That's the one.
It's 1 page. Right. That's it.
Personal structure and meeting and missions. Personnel structure and mission.
Can it zoom out slightly, like to full?
Not that far out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, this is perfect. I think, at least for me. I hope other people can see it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, 4 groups. One that is roughly equivalent to the complaints subcommittee that Raj and Marty and I are working on already, which I called accountability. So it includes complaints, but is broader. One, which is community outreach, which parallels the walk and talk effort that Jonathan and Casey and I, and also at least in principle, not Bernard and Dwayne are on. So it includes walk and talk, but it's broader. And then 2 other committees, one that's about personnel issues, broadly speaking, and one that's about racism and other, I think, important and very salient topics in Brookline, like militarization and handling of mass events, given the incident with the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office this summer. So that's the, and you know, perhaps
Okay.
not every item fits as neatly within each heading and so on, but this was my.
No, okay, I think this is great, great thing to start with. So let's see. So are you reading from the same page that's up on the board, Michael? What's on the
Yes.
board is personnel first, personnel structure
Yes.
and mission.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Devin, could you?
Yeah, I didn't read them in order, but.
Oh, okay, okay. Devin, I hate to burden you again. Could you send that to all the committee members so that they can, or it's in the packet, right?
No. Did not make the packet.
Okay, Devin, could you send that out to people? And by the way, there should be another subcommittee, and that is looking at the civil service issues. And maybe
I think that falls well under
there.
personnel.
Pardon me? Okay,
I
but
think personnel.
okay, make that explicit in that.
Okay, I'll modify that and send them modified to Devin right now, if that sounds okay.
You hear that, Devin? Okay.
I did, and I will let everyone know that this will be in your 9/16/20 meeting materials folder. I'm
Okay.
not going to regenerate a full packet just with this one item.
Right, right.
Michael,
Okay.
I think you take off draft at this point off the, whatever you call it, the, what's it called?
Yeah, okay.
You know,
Yeah, do that. Okay, let's move on. I think we have a plan for that. Okay, there are a couple of things duplicated on the agenda as posted. So work plan considering establishing additional subcommittees. Pre-meeting, we did that. Chokehold Ban, we did that. Community outreach by police department. Okay, does the subcommittee on community outreach, walk and talk program, et cetera, have a presentation?
I think I'm the only person present. So let me just say, we circulated the survey, which is in the packet, the most recent draft, to BHA stakeholders. I also shared it with a few other folks, including Select Board Member Fernandez. But yeah, and so Casey shared it with BHA staff, and my impression is she's also going to send it to some BHA residents, and we're going to get their feedback and hopefully and continue the process of moving forward with the survey.
Okay, good. Anything else?
And the subcommittees, Bernard, we're just supposed to write to you and Devin with our choices?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else we need to talk about?
Will we get the full chokehold policy as revised? Remember to send that to us, please.
Yeah, I don't have any meetings until 3 o'clock, so I have time to do that. And I'll send it to Devin and she can send it out. Is that okay, Devin?
Yes.
Okay.
Bernard,
Yes.
are we going to, do we have I don't think we have a meeting next week, but should we?
What do people think?
Well, this is something, Marty, that I think you brought up at the beginning of the meeting, and other residents have requested, you know, information on a regular meeting schedule. So maybe the board, maybe the committee could discuss that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd also like
it. Pardon me?
Well, that's what I'd like as well.
Okay. And okay, is Jonathan still here? Because I think he had an issue with late afternoon meetings. Okay, he left. I think his issue was temporary. Does anyone remember?
I recall that as well. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to set up a, why don't we tentatively say that we have regular meetings every week is not, I don't think is something we want to do because we have subcommittees working.
I'd propose every other week at 5 o'clock Wednesdays, with one exception. Given that the public hearing is the 30th, I'd like the subcommittee structure to be finalized next week. So I would start that cycle every other week, but meet next week. That's
Okay.
my
Anyone,
proposal.
and that's a proposal. Anyone have alternatives or people who agree with that?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let's go with that. And
so my question clarifying that is, so you will meet next week on the 23rd. The public hearing will be the 30th. And
Right.
then technically that would have been your off week. Would you
Right.
like to maintain a meeting on the 7th or do you not want to resume until the 14th?
I'd go for the 7th.
Yeah, I'd like to resume on the 7th and then go every other week after that.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to sort of digest the hearing, the comments from the public. And remember, this is not an interactive hearing. This is just an opportunity for the public to tell us what they think. Ideas, suggestions. So it'd be good to then the next week review those ideas and suggestions and see if we need to adjust either our educational program or adjust the subcommittee's work. Okay. That's all we have. Unless okay, it's September 30 joint public hearing. That's scheduled for 7 o'clock. Any discussion of that? Any suggestions?
Well, we can talk about that next week, but I have one other thing that I want to remind people. Is everyone aware that the Reimagining Task Force meets every Friday at 8 a.m. and I would urge any of you that are available to just follow their discussions, which I'm doing.
Yeah.
As a reminder, all of you are on the calendar invite for those meetings. That is a recurring webinar event. And once you register, you use the same link every time to join. Additionally, Big posts that meeting within 24 hours on their YouTube channel. So if you can't be there from 8 to 10, you can always watch it after the fact.
I think it's been really valuable. I've sat in on their meetings, so I would encourage everyone to do that if you haven't.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Anything else? Well, let's end this meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.